Bienvenidos. Welcome. My name is Fred Sandoval. I'm the Executive Director for the National Latino Behavioral Health Association. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you for being here with us. It's good to have you here on live Facebook. And thank you for joining us for our series called Pláticas, Latino Wellness During COVID-19. NALBA is a nonprofit agency that is dedicated to the well-being of Latinos across the United States. Our mission is to ensure that we address the disparities that impact the Latinos and their well-being. So today we're going to get to hear about how this is done al estilo in El Paso, Texas. But more importantly, we're excited to host this live Facebook event, which we do every month. And we particularly want to say thank you to Morehouse University School of Medicine for helping make these series possible as part of our effort of the National COVID Resiliency Network, which we are a partner of. But having said that, each month we invite and we ask a community leader, a professional, someone in the medical behavioral health field, even public health, to come talk to us a little bit about what's happening in their community or in their county or in their state, about how COVID has impacted the Latino community there. But more importantly, what the Latino community is doing to respond to help deal with a pandemic that's still with us today. And I can simply say this, I'm excited about today's show. You're all going to get rocked out with what we're about to hear. I'm going to introduce my guests here in just a little bit, but I again want to acknowledge that the live Facebook audience gets to participate in this Plática. So we're going to be looking for your chats, your questions, and you're going to be directing them to my comadre, Corinne Chacon, or myself. But what's important is that we engage you in this Plática today. So let me introduce our esteemed guest, because it gives me great pleasure to ask and invite and have with us today Corinne Chacon, who has worn many incredible hats. You know, I see her as one of El Paso's most significant community leaders, and she is not just a shaker and mover. She really is continuing to tread new openings and opportunities to help ensure that the community stays well. And the way that she does it is al estilo El Paso, right? Because the Paso Norte region is so unique to this part of the world that, you know, she's influenced by her culture, her traditions, the histories of that area that are so important. And we just greatly appreciate having her here. You know, in her bio, this is what she said, and I'm going to share it with you because in part it's a personal bio, but al estilo Corinne, which is classic, right? And she says, as a Mexican American, I understand that our communities, tight-knit families help us to be resilient. Can we leverage that behavior to reinforce our wellness? She asks that question. She goes on to say, I believe a holistic approach, mind, body, and soul, that integrates traditional medicine, behavioral health, indigenous medicine, and complementary practice holds the key. Otras palabras, ahí está la llave, ¿verdad? As an artist, activist, mystic, I view life through a spiritual framework. My journey begins with trying to understand the roots of a situation and the opportunities for transformation contained therein. She finishes by saying, acknowledging the unity of all existence at the quantum level, awareness can be a pivotal point for introducing change. So with that, I also want to introduce Corinne Chacon. Bienvenidos. It's good to see you. And all I could say is I'm just tickled about this Plática. All I can say is everyone should hold on to their seats. But I'm going to ask you to say a little bit more, Corinne, about yourself so the live Facebook audience can get to know you a little bit. So go ahead and say a little more.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you and everyone at NALBA and all of the members are doing. It has never been a more important time than now. And everyone, I think, has been prepared by destiny to deal with the unique challenges, you know, because we essentially have to show the whole world a way forward through celebration. You know, that's kind of been the key of Mexicanos in particular, but all the Latino family that we have, you know, is that we celebrate each other. And we don't do it just to get together and eat paella or menudo or whatever the dish may be. We do it because that's how we connect over and over and over and over again. We maintain the network of connection And some groups do not understand that because they see it as trivial or useless or superfluous and superficial, and it isn't, because we're connecting. And I find out how you're doing, and I find out how our cousin is, and I find out who got a new job or who's got a baby or who needs groceries because they have COVID, and so that's the intelligence system that we have that keeps our community going, in spite of tremendous challenges and ongoing loss and the persistent structural inequity that we encounter. Things are not always our fault. There's a reason why all of our professionals are exhausted. There's a reason why parents are burnt out. There's a reason why kids have tuned off, and the voter apathy, of course, is part of that. And so we need to keep showing the way forward, because I feel right now there is a vacuum of ways forward. The pandemic has disrupted so many things, but for Latinos, our families, we have suffered losses, certainly, but we're still here, and we need to celebrate each other every day. Someone's birthday is coming up, and you have to make space for it. Somebody is going to be passing away, and you have to make space for it. And that's how we continue to stay together, stay united, and keep inspiring one another. So it's just a real pleasure to be here with you.
Oh my gosh. I remember our conversations we had more than 2 years ago, by the way. And at that time, El Paso was being referred to as a hot spot. In otras palabras, there was big spikes in COVID cases. That isn't the case today. There's been a lot of community efforts, and much credit to the community, and certainly the work of Mano y Corazón Institute for really working in partnership con otros, right? Working with others, but even initiating and really stewarding the process for how the community can respond to a pandemic. And today that's not the case. And the way that you do it in El Paso, I think, is very distinct, because El Paso is right next to Mexico, and across the river is Juarez. And so that border area, and then that proximity to the Paso del Norte region, all of that is just a unique place. And tell people what that's like, because we get folks from different parts of the country listening to the show. So somebody in Chicago might not know what that's like. Somebody in Bedford, Massachusetts might not know what that's like, or somebody in Raleigh, North Carolina, or even Seattle. But help our listening audience to get a context of that area of the country, because it's so unique. And then we're going to talk about something you're all now doing that's pretty phenomenal. So I'll save that for just a little bit. But tell our audience a little bit about that area of the country.
Well, you're looking at literally just this true border that was sprang up around the Rio Grande River, which used to be a huge, massive waterway, and it's quite different now. But all along this river, you have these twin towns, and so El Paso's twin city is Ciudad Juarez. I'm in what they call a different part of the county, annexed by the city of El Paso, but originally its own place. We're from 1681, and there's a twin town across from us. So you have this set of twin cities on the Mexican side and the US side. And then we include Las Cruces going into New Mexico because it is just a 40-minute drive from us, and so you have this conglomeration of communities with this shared history, and that are constantly in motion. I mean, the mobility between El Paso and Juarez is tremendous. Every day, the motion back and forth. And that's excluding the commercial traffic, because this is the 5th largest port in the United States. So there's this constant exchange of ideas and artists and creativity and news, crime, unfortunately, disease, that is just constant. And so we are in this really cosmopolitan community and environment that is very heavily impacted by national policy and global health policy. because it is Juarez is twice as big as El Paso, and almost every twin city of a United States border city is twice as big, and so there's a mentality sometimes of like, oh, little Mexico, and it's like, no, this is Ciudad Juarez is an industrial powerhouse, with like 300 manufacturers of biomedical equipment, so way outstripping El Paso's manufacturing capacity, and so you just see this constant interplay of movement of people, ideas, and art, and art. So it is a very exciting place to live. It doesn't come without a cost, but it's a very exciting place to live. And I think because of that, you have these unusual solutions that get created, and I'll give you an example. There's a phenomenal CEO who now is working in California. She's from here, and she was CEO of one of the partners, and she was criticized for spending $50,000 on a piece of equipment that she put it in a Juarez hospital. And so there was this uproar and this outrage, well, these are US dollars, why are we sending them to Mexico? And it's like, well, either I put the machine over there, or we spend $500,000 a month dealing with people who come here because this is the place where the machine is. And so instantly you see that there's a solution that crosses borders, but that kind of defies conventional thinking, because you have to get into the detail and the nuance of how things happen in the border, and disease doesn't respect that line, So it is I think it yields a very ingenious mindset. Those of us who are here know we are miles and miles from Washington, D.C., and we're miles and miles from Austin. And so a lot of times we have to come up, we cannot wait. We have to come up with our own solutions. And because we're so intertwined, because of the permanency that you have taught me about, that generations stay here, we have all these relationships to call on. And that really makes us tight knit, not without our challenges, because some of those relationships are the root of problematic mentalities, but we really have a tremendous wealth of, and I think a very rich way that we live with so much corazón and cariño to one another. We love to help each other, and that comes through.
Oh my gosh, does it? I sometimes think I'm related to la gente en El Paso, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And
it's a feel,
seriously,
Mhm.
yeah, seriously. And you used a number 1681, and the first thing that came to my mind was the Nuevo Mexicanos that left here after the Pueblo Revolt created their settlement right there at the river banks there
Mhm.
in El Paso. And so the term Paso del Norte originates from all of that area where you're passing the river to go north to what would have been Santa Fe, right? Santa
Yeah.
Fe being that extended site up in the norte, as we call it here. But all to say is that, so the New Mexico families that moved there, including the Isleta Pueblo Indians that moved
Yes.
to that area, many of them stayed, and then many
Yes.
of them returned back to Santa Fe. But so really our relatives, and my relatives are all the ones that first came in 1598. So
Mhm.
we're probably distant primos, and all I can say is it feels like it, to me, it's like, I think it is,
Yeah, definitely. Very possible. Very
I
possible.
hope so. But you're spot on to describe, a modern context, but I want to make sure I just mention the fact that the U.S. Mexico border, U.S. New Mexico, U.S. Mexico Border Health Commission has had an office in El Paso, and they have recently revitalized their efforts under the current administration. I say all of that because it's a relationship between the Mexican border states and the U.S. states, all of the focus on health. And
Mhm.
I spoke to them recently, and their two top priorities are health and now behavioral health. And that's very significant because now we're going to start to hear and learn more about your efforts there in El Paso that are very holistic. So it's not limited to just one area. You understand the way all these things connect. And so we're going to want to segue into learning more about Campo de Estrellas, because it's a very unique way of tapping into the lifeblood of the community about things that are important for us to preserve, maintain, promote, and advance, because the work of taking care of the community has to be active.
Mhm.
And there isn't any better way than to give examples of what that looks like. So we invited you today so that you could talk to us about Campos de Estrellas, and then help our listening audience start to understand that in El Paso, what does it look like? And you've got a couple of things that you're going to share with us. You have,
Mhm.
I think, a YouTube clip and even some slides. Great idea. This way we can kind of diversify the multimedia aspects of this plática, because, like you said, a picture is worth 1,000 words, ¿verdad? So, Corinne, let me stop, turn it over to you, and you've got a few things you want to show us. So, por
Yes.
favor.
I am going to share my screen and guide you what I think are some important um, comments to kind of set the tone for us. So the Field of Stars is a mobile educational flag museum. We have working with a group, a couple of community partners, we developed a list of 111 people that we believe have really contributed to this, to making the city better. They're all either El Pasoans or they spend most of their careers here. And for the most part, their stories have not been told, and we feel that the inspiration they bring now is critical as we want to inspire people, and particularly young people. But I'm learning at every level, people have been left very saddened by the effects of the pandemic, and that's sadness and emotions are chemistry in the brain, and so we can change those, because if we don't, those things really set into us, and they can start to limit what we think are our possibilities. And the world needs all of us kind of firing on all cylinders now. So I wanted to share a couple of quotes that I think are just so important. Elena Avila was a nurse here in El Paso, but she was also a curandera. And she talked about susto. She was the first person that I said, that I encountered who just says, this is what susto is. And she says, in my culture, we have always known that the soul can be injured as deeply as the body, mind, and emotions. And we call this kind of wounding susto. Literally translated, this means fright of the soul. Because the soul is sacred and should never be touched, when it is violated by traumatic experiences, it runs and hides as if it had become frozen in time because of terrible events. Well, we've just come through and are coming through the pandemic, and that was a terrible event, and the susto, if you address it real quickly, you can keep it from settling into the nervous system. When you don't, you start to see impacts. And the next quote that I'm going to share with you is by the brilliant Candace B. Pert, who both she and Miss Avila have passed away, unfortunately. Candace Pert discovered the molecules of emotion and caused a huge furor in her circles when she said neurons do not just live in the brain, they live throughout the body, carrying information. And the neurotransmitters are highly focused in the area of our abdomen, and she said this is this gut instinct that we get about things, this fear, anger, courage. However, her point here, and I think it really emphasizes Elena Avila's point, it is this problem of unhealed feeling, the accumulation of bruised and broken emotions that most people stagger under without ever saying a word, that the mainstream medical model is least effective in dealing with, because they're dealing with the physical part. There was a study in 2013. So this is already a dated study. This is 10 years old.
Right.
And they were saying that, they studied 123,000 patients were surveyed. and 40 to 60% of them were in the doctor's office for what was essentially emotionally based conditions. So if that was in 2013, that our unhealed feeling was taking, at least half of the cause of us ending up in seeing a doctor, you can just imagine what that's like now with all of the unhealed feeling from the pandemic, where people sustained so many losses and over such a long period of time, that, and we're at the beginning of it, we're going to be people will be studying the pandemic and its impact on society for the rest of our lives, certainly. It is just enormous. The beauty of this is that we have ways, indigenous ways, where we can connect through our groundedness and to a greater cosmos and draw external energy from that cosmos. We draw inspiration from outside of ourselves, from outside of our typical routine, from outside of the group that we typically are with, who may all be going through this alongside with us. And so by bringing in this external energy, this tapping an external unlimited source, really connects us to a new resource for our healing. And, the pandemic revealed that there are just tremendous fractures in our society. And so how do we move past anger and indignation and fury and just this sense that it was so unfair? Well, we need inspiration, because there's always been unfairness. And nonetheless, people persist. And in particular, Latinos persist. So I developed the field of stars, Campo de Estrellas. And the elements of this is that it's community-centered. It's based on art. It integrates digital learning and social media. It teaches fairness and history, positive student motivation, and connection to our ancestors. So all of the values, I think, of our intrinsic approach and philosophy, that we're connected. It's not just me, it's not just my family, it's my community, because my cousins are here, and their brothers are here, and the people in my parish, the people from my high school, the people I see at work. It's all of us. We don't just have this chopped up, discrete relationship with the world. It literally is all of us. And those celebrations that we talk about, Fred, where we see each other repeatedly, that is this mortar that bonds us together. So here you see an example of a community college professor, a philosophy professor, a native of Ciudad Juarez, who is one of the state's top educators. She participated in a lowrider event and was a flag bearer for the Dolores Huerta flag. And you can see that she's wearing white gloves. Well, in organizing the procession, because this is the first time we shared these flags with the community, I purchased white gloves because I wanted everyone to wear them to convey that these are special people. They could have chosen to live their lives in very different ways. They could have chosen to be, bank presidents and grow the assets of a bank, and that's very important. They could have chosen to be, any number of things. In fact, we have a banker, but their work has always been about caring, and caring means that you're connected. So the field of stars is really based in the community, and it has started in El Paso, but it can be grown anywhere that you really want to create a mobile museum that can inspire young people to move past the brain chemistry of loss and grief and uncertainty and anxiety and depression, and move to possibility. And so in the field of stars, we have a committee that nominated the first group. But one of the first things that we discovered is that there's a lot of people we don't know. And so the community has started to say, you need to hear the story of my dad or of my grandfather or my grandmother. And so we want those stories because they're helping to fill out and tell a fuller, more complete history of El Paso. And when people nominate a person to be honored, there's a sponsorship fee. And what we find is that this builds a group of followers for each flag. And as we keep unrolling this, we know that this is going to be a community that just continues to get bigger and bigger. So it's very thrilling. It's very thrilling. This is art-based, you know. Here I have just a sample. This is a dozen. We have actually 30 flags now, you know, and the rich palette of colors really speaks to cultura. You know, I can't find any more basic element that really shows who we are than our use of like every color. You know, it's like, you know, I know PowerPoint recommends palettes of colors, but we're like, no, we're like hummingbirds. You know, we want every color, you know, on every single page. And that works for us, you know. So here you have a priest, a restaurateur, an attorney, an artist educator, a journalist, a county judge, political trailblazer, an LGBTQ visionary, a congressman, a sports editor, Chicana, at the LA Times, you know, a designer, a graphic designer, public servant, and the icon, Dolores Huerta. And when you look at that, a student can say, they look like me. And that's a big deal because mainstream media does not show positive images of us. So this incorporates a holistic learning experience because children, and you'll see here the students who were the volunteer flag bearers at the first event are out in they're out in nature. You know, there's the sun, there's the wind, there's grass. They're not sitting in a cube looking at the telephone, you know. So it's real world events where people will encounter the flags. And once the flags, once an event has completed, we put the flags away because we don't want a monument that gets defaced. We don't want a monument that gets disrespected. We treasure these images and protect them like heirlooms, and they will stay forever new for that reason. And that makes the investment in it very wise for the community because very few of our communities can put down 50 million to create a giant, 20-ton statue. That's just not within most of our means.
Right.
But I play the lottery, so I'm working on that. Okay, so that's one of my goals. So
Still not another question.
This integrates the internet, social media. There's a website where we have biographies on all of the honorees, and then a moderated Facebook page, or it could be TikTok, to build and sustain healthy connections. And luego I wanted to include this quote by a superintendent in Illinois. And he says, with every decision we make, we're either closing the equity gap or perpetuating it. And so my point is here, how we reach out, and that's to who? Where do the messages go to? We were at a lowrider event because the lowriders are very prominent in El Paso, very dedicated, very stable, and they're the ones who commissioned me to do the first 6 set of flags. And so they put money down and said, we need our national Chicana icons on flags. So we like your concept. Let's make it happen. Where we spend, how a school district uses their assets, what kind of books are children reading? And in the state of Texas, there's certain topics we can't go near. But when you see the flags out in the open at a festival, and people can look at a QR code, kids can scan a QR code and instantly go see a lot of biographies that they cannot encounter in the schoolroom. You see that this liberates us from the constraints of certain guidelines that we may or may not agree with. There's no limit to what a person can learn, and we're proving that with this project. So it's what we teach and how we teach it. Being outdoors and being able to just be among a field of inspiring people is an extraordinary feeling. And the project models fairness. How do we show kids why fairness is important? Fairness is a value that we have to teach about, because people are not born intrinsically fair. I think some of the extraordinary leaders are, because of their spiritual natures, but some are not. And it's easy to be seduced by a different set of values. You have here, today's choices create history. And for young people, they need to know they're not at a dead end. They're at the beginning of a world that has had some positive changes in addition to this tremendous loss that has impacted us. And I included here our trailblazers, African Americans who settled in El Paso in the early 1900s. And so they were making changes and building community, sanctuary, connection very early on, and planted some very incredible roots that continue to this day. Like you were pointing out, the families that have stayed here and remained here. We endure because we have a connection, we have a nest to call our own. And then it motivates students to overcome adversity. And I have here three phenomenal individuals. Here's my mother, born to a working class family. There was no trust funds involved. And when she was in the third grade, the teacher asked what everyone wanted to be when they grew up, and she raised her hand and she said, "I want to be a nurse." And the teacher said, "No, your hands are brown. Your hands are dirty. I don't think you can be a nurse." Well, she didn't listen to that. She became the first Chicana on the school board, the first Chicana on city council, the first woman elected in El Paso County, the first Mexican-American county judge in Texas in over 100 years, the first woman appointed to regional administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration by Jimmy Carter. So she did not allow that initial slapdown stop her at all, and then you have Enrique Moreno, one of the top attorneys in his day. He's passed away, rest in peace. In his day, he was one of the top civil rights attorneys in the country. And he was nominated twice to be on the appeals court, federal circuit. But because he could not get the endorsements of the two senators from Texas, he was never allowed to step up and live out that destiny that would have, who knows what could have been born from that journey. But that pathway was not to be, And then you have Paul Moreno, who is from Central El Paso, and after serving in the Navy, as a Marine, I'm sorry, Semper Fi. After serving as a Marine, he was injured in a diving accident and spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And when he was first elected to the Texas House of Representatives, there was not even a wheelchair ramp or a way for him to get into the Texas Capitol. So you realize that every day was a struggle for him, and he wound up being the longest serving Hispano in the United States, serving for over 40 years. Amazing. So adversity is going to come. We had the shooting here in El Paso. Because of that, they believe we had some built-in new relationships that we had created in response that helped with COVID. So it's ironic, the fruit of that. And there will be other adversity that will come and that young people will have to deal with. But they have one another, and they have the field of stars to look to for inspiration and to shift the brain chemistry. Again, we got to shift the brain chemistry to hopefulness. So in the connection to the ancestors, our culture is characterized by this, they like to call it mystical realism when we write about what to us are real experiences. It's not, it isn't mystical, it's reality. And if you study quantum science, it's actually scientific fact that the quantum field contains all of the possibilities. So when we are inspired, whether it's by looking at the stars, contemplating the cosmos like our ancestors did, or reminiscing and connecting to the feelings of love from our loved ones who have crossed over, we tap into a different energy source, and that shifts the brain chemistry out of hopelessness. So it isn't just that we want to eat menudo every Sunday. It's that we want to tap into this that is bigger than us as individuals. And so, I wanted to give everyone, this is the Sagittarius star cluster. But as you're looking at it, your brain is actually connecting to the power of all of these stars and all of these galaxies. And so for a moment, you shift out of your office. You're not driving in your neighborhood in the same route that you take every day, putting your shoes on the exact same way. The sameness of our lives, which, seem to, they do give us a stability and a certain level of comfort, but they can become too closed up. And so we constantly need to be looking at the stars to get energy from a whole endless source and field of possibilities. So for the field of stars, the next thing is that we're continuing to, I have an order for 12 other flags to build and to design. And so the orders continue to come in. We want to have a calendar, a booklet for February where we have a kind of a formal event, looking at some merchandise so that kids can wear apparel that is culturally affirming and positive, which is a big deal. It's a big deal for us to be the source of some of that imagery. Continuing local outreach to the schools so that the Field of Stars can tour the different schools for Career Day, working on the website and creating a toolkit so that we can seed projects in San Diego, Austin, San Antonio, other major cities on the border, and hopefully collecting testimonials from some of the people who are watching this today. So I am Corinne Chacon. I want to share just a little bit of footage with you. And then I also want to listen and get some of your feedback. So without further ado, I want to share a little bit of video from the event. And let me see if I can do that without causing undue madness here.
Corinne, as you're pulling that up, I want to share something from one of our live Facebook audience members. And this is from Socorro Rodriguez. And Socorro, good to have you back. Good to have you joining us today. And she says, thank you for talking about this. Sustos are real and they deeply injure our soul and body. Many times they never heal. Also, our good friend, our colleague, and even an associate of NALBA, la estimada doctora Mercedes Martinez, is joining us today all the way from Chicago, or for certainly from Illinois. And she was just excited to tell you that this notion that you described, she says, absolutely. And when you talked about bruised emotions, she was concurring with your statement in the way that you described it. And eloquently is not a word I use often, but yeah, your ability to state it so people can feel it and understand it. It's just always so moving and powerful. Angie Gonzalez, by the way, does a little shout out for you and says, wow, how interesting, exclamation mark, right? So all I could tell you is this is going to be a very powerful recorded message that we're just so excited to share. But I know you're going to share something else with us now. So let me put it and send it back over to you.
Wonderful. I just want to share a few moments of the footage from us of the flags at Lincoln Park, which is an amazing one of those museums underneath a freeway where the community and the artists essentially saved those columns and the area and created an outdoor museum, And so the Field of Stars made its debut. Its first installation was here in El Paso. So this event drew we estimate at least 7,000 people. And so we had 25 flags that were introduced to the community.
Amazing.
And we handed out QR codes so that people were able to get to the website to see the bios.
So it looks like you have some footage that helps to kind of show all of that event. So we're excited to see it because it's a chance to kind of see how it is that we engage with the Latino community as part of our normal patterns, right? But more importantly is how we share information that might not otherwise be known or shared in a way that's just appropriate. Because in Lincoln Park, folks know that that's an area where raza convenes and they can feel the comfort, the safety, and the security of knowing they can be there in a way that helps them to keep their own traditions and cultural practices alive, whatever event that might be, or festival, or ferias, lo que sea, right? Or the art exhibits and all the lowrider shows that take place, las danzas y la música. So this is such a cultural central hub to El Paso. I just want to make sure folks know that Lincoln Park is definitely one of those places that really kind of highlights the soul of that community in many ways. So,
Were
all
you
right.
able to,
So,
were you able to see any of that, Fred?
no, if you can
Okay.
just go ahead and stop this share of the
Okay,
PowerPoint and share the YouTube, then we'll be able to see that.
great. I think I'm doing the right thing now. Let me try.
I know. I saw this. You're there. I see it. And of course, it doesn't have a volume associated with it, but if you can just watch the images, that would be great. Maybe you can walk us through this, give us a little museum tour as the camera walks us through this. Anything you want to add would be great.
We did the first installation and handed out cards that showed listed the 25 people's names and just a brief title. You know, there you can see the Ruben Cubillos flag. He designed the Selena logo and was an icon in the Tejano industry, which had to fight to be accepted as a genre. You know, you see there the flag of Judge Alicia Chacon, of Alberto Armendariz, federal judge. And I found it very fascinating. These were placed in a colonnade that people like to stand around them. You know, I don't know if it's just a natural affinity or, you know, that you feel like you're standing near something. That's Monsignor who just retired after 46 years of service here in the borderland. But you just see, this is education that is out in the open. It's accessible. When you point the phone to the QR code, you can read the bio, you can save it for later, you can take a selfie. And they just added so much to the environment of that event. You know, and then they're constantly moving, which is why the banners are popular to begin with. You know, they have that whole element of motion. So I wanted to just really share that with everyone so that you can just get a better sense of what it was like.
Wow. Woo. All I could say is, my God, this was like getting a magical mystery tour from El Paso and sending it out across the country. And it'll be seen in Mexico as well and other places. But our comadre, la doctora Mercedes Martinez, says, truly a cultura perspective of trauma and the concept of hope, esperanza, right? And it just really is such a powerful description of, you know, how the community defines how it helps itself, how it heals itself, how it is that it copes and manages. And oftentimes, because it's not described as mainstream or research based or funded by the national institutes of this, that, and the other, it does not and will never diminish the value, the impact, and the sanctity of those practices, because they in fact are the very things that have allowed us to persist and keep this permanence on this earth. Because, you know, we're blessed, especially because of the aspects that you described when we say soul, spirit, faith. All those aspects are intrinsic to this human phenomena we call human beings. And what's powerful about it is that the raza has mastered that over their entire history.
Mhm.
And that history precedes the histories of the West, right? These are or the East. These are the phenomenons that have been here because of our ancestors. And for those of us who have indigenous ancestors here in the Americas, what it reflects is this rootedness to all of these science, because in part, who were the scientists that were able to understand the astronomical aspects of our connection to the universe? Well, I could tell you what, man. NASA would love to have hired all the Mayans and the Incas, to be honest with you, because they would have said, well, they already had the pathways down. They get to pass on that knowledge to us, you know. But I just want to say, here's a comment, and I want you to respond to this comment because I think it's a chance for the live audience to listen to your responses to their comments. We have a compadre Fernando Gonzalez. He says, great orientation directed to students. They look like me. And let us never forget the words of the father of Chicano music, Lalo Guerrero, when he said, "There's no Chicanos on TV." Remember when he made that statement? He was talking about a period in time that was pretty, very much a period in time where Americanism was flourishing around national identity for the Americans, but there were no Chicanos on TV, right? And so today, here you're helping advance the fact that these heroes, the influences, these are people that are me. They look like me. They think like me. They may even dress like me. And it's a powerful statement. He goes on to say, the description of the border of El Paso, Juarez, New Mexico, here it is unique and realistic. Gracias. Enjoyed your presentation. So, Corinne, maybe you can respond to Fernando because clearly he picked up on your points, the things you wanted people to hear. So, say a little more about that.
Well, the curriculum choices, the history books. Someone has to decide we're going to write about the movimiento or we're not. Someone's going to decide, are we going to talk about farm workers and the agriculture industry, or we're not, and so all of those decisions have implications in what our children learn and what kids are exposed to, and so when you don't have those choices, you do not know that they exist and that possibility exists in a real way for you. I will never forget the story about Senator Jose Rodriguez, who for whom I was district director. He grew up as a farm worker. He was like one of 10 children. And he found one day in a library a biography of Thurgood Marshall. And after he read that book, he was 9. That's when he decided, I'm going to be an attorney. So it became possible to him that he could become that. And through his career and his trajectory, which has been very honorable and powerful and transformative, he became state senator, and right now he's enjoying his retirement. But his whole life changed, and it's that single intersection with possibility that can have such a big impact. And out in the open, without anyone saying right or wrong, this or that, you see someone's flag. You see what their lives are about, and you can decide, I can be a software engineer. I can be an astronaut. I can be a mathematician. And those intersections with possibility are the greatest things that we can be seeding right now. We've got to show kids a way forward and restore hope for the rest of the generations. It has been horrible, but we got to get past it. I mean, that's our choice. We got to get past it, and we got to keep celebrating and finding hope, and supporting each other in projects that inculcate hope.
Your work, you're a curan. The term community curandero was used the other day, and I'm not a medical curandero by any means, medical in terms of the traditions, ¿verdad? But I'm a great appreciator of that art, that practice, that science, that discipline, because I can tell you what, throughout my childhood, my mom was practicing those things. And what's really important here is that you touched me in a way that I have never been able to put words to it. And I always tell people, well, if you want to motivate me, just inspire me. You actually gave a description of that. When you inspire people, you actually stimulate the brain chemistry. And that's the thing, right? The endorphins get
Yes.
stimulated in ways that we can manage and control. And that's absolutely true, because part of my own desire to help others is to be inspired by what to do to help my fellow humans, regardless of color or political orientation. Those don't mean anything to me. What means something to me is their humanity and how it is that our brain can help stimulate that. And if that isn't behavioral health, I don't know what is, right? Because it's about wellness, our sanctity of human beings and caring for each other. That is
Yes.
behavioral health, the
Yes.
wellness of our identities, and it's all that intrinsic approach. And all I could say is we can someday say that we have helped advance this educational approach a few more inches ahead. Pero sabes que I want to give you an opportunity to hear a couple more comments, because when you go back to Facebook, please respond to folks with your comments, because here's one from Virginia Shrove, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Virginia. She says, "This is an excellent presentation. I'm not Latino, but am finding it very educational and joyous." Spot on. That's exactly right. We want to transcend those things that have maybe prevented us from being more mutually informed or collectively connected. But you're absolutely right. You know, we as one, our collective self, as community, nation, world, and the universe, really, we are all interconnected. When we realize that, we're going to be a much better place. But I want to give you the last opportunity to close us out. Anything more you want to say about this incredible initiative? And then, you know, Dia de los Muertos is upon us. And so let us not forget our antepasados, right? Our ancestors, because here we are, right? Always connecting, reconnecting, promoting those traditions, because our wellness is embedded in our practices. And guess what? That's powerful, because one is the value of our beliefs is so powerful for our well-being. So just, I'm going to turn it over to Corinne to bring us home. And after that, we're going to wrap up. But it's just been a pleasure to have you here. Now I know why I always want to interview you, porque you help remind me that el liderazgo, the leadership that we bring, is to help make things better. And you, comadre, make things better for your relationships, your family, your community. Gives me great honor.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you so much, Fred. Um, I just want to touch on the whole cosmos aspect of things, because such is our disconnect, the mainstream disconnect from the cosmos, is that we think it's like somewhere else, you know, and it's like the Earth is floating in space like every other a celestial body, you know. So we're cosmic, we're inherently cosmic. And I believe that's why the Mayans and the Egyptians and the Sumerians and so many other traditions have this fascination, because you actively are weaving this connection to the cosmos. And so when you talk about unity, well, that planet is part of that, you know. I think the pandemic, in a way that we had never seen since, I think, the 1970s, when you first saw the first picture of the planet Earth from space, really brought home, this is all of us. This, we live in one place, you know, address Earth. And the more we rely on that and build that network, the stronger we become. You know, it fascinates me, and this is particularly important for the medical professionals right now, and the first responders, and all the counselors doing such beautiful work. You can be exhausted, but when you connect, like with someone at lunchtime, like friends you haven't seen, people that you really love and admire, all of a sudden there's new energy in you. Well, where did that new energy come from? It wasn't there before. It's from reconnecting and feeling free in that environment, not all stiff and like just like formal and what is my protocol and how I behave, but in connecting. And all of a sudden you have an energy that you didn't have before, and that makes us all these magical dynamos capable of transmitting light and clarity to one another. And that's an industry that is pure and clean, and we can call on it on any time, and that's what's happening in the constant celebrating and the constant, the persistent circular, cyclical celebrating and reconnecting. But also, I urge people, look at the stars, feed yourself with the energy of the stars, follow the Webb telescope, because it is showing us this phenomenal detail. And when you're looking at that, you're looking at energy, and that energy is hitting your brain. So there's some medicine for you right there,
Yeah, great medicine. And with Dia de los Muertos coming, as a tradition found in Mexico, and the beauty of what we get to hear about, our ancestors, they're listening to this at this very moment, right? They're right
wow,
behind
that's
us,
cool.
right?
That's cool.
Yeah. 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 It's like, we just happen to want to communicate with them through Facebook Live ahora. So, hey, cool. Pero, there's this concept, I call it the we concept, WE. And the we concept is about, when we talk to each other and I use the word we, you can look at me and you can say, but wasn't this coming from you? Isn't this your idea? And I said, well, the people who have helped influence me are the people behind me. It's the people I talked to before I made these comments. My tia, my madrina, or my carnal, or my bro, or my dad, or my abuelito. They collectively help influence my answers and my responses and my thoughts. And so I give them credit when I say we versus I, as if though somehow it all came from me, as if though somehow I'm the originator of all these things. The truth of it is, we did this together, the collective identity of ourselves, right? And it's a powerful thing because here we are, you and I, getting to help share and disseminate all of this. And I know this program has been just incredible. I can tell you, we're going to reshare this as many times as we can to get this word out, because it's really about, how people can understand how in culture, values and beliefs influence how we behave, and how we choose to behave can inform us making choices to take care of ourselves and our families and our communities. And you gave a great recipe for one way to do that. We invite people to come to El Paso to visit the NYC Institute and their remarkable community of influencers and leaders. And we're excited to partner with NYC on this initiative. And all I could simply say is, you guys sometimes have some of the greatest ideas around, and it's because part of it is you love your community. And so with that, I want to remind our listening audience, for those of you who are getting ready to visit our Mariachi Christmas on December 2nd at the Lenzic Performing Arts Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have tickets for sale, and all I can say, it sells out every year. The proceeds of that event go to NALBA, supporting scholarships for Latino students pursuing a college degree in behavioral health. We're building the workforce one student at a time. 97% of our students have gone on to graduate from college, and all 97% have gone on to work in the behavioral health field. So join me in Mariachi Christmas today. It's an opportunity to say, muchísimas gracias, Corinne. All I could say is another regrounding with you. You inspire me, and more importantly, you inspire many others. And I know this will help inspire many of those folks who listens to this today's Plática. Again, Fred Sandoval with the National Latino Behavioral Health Association, with my guest, Corinne Chacon from the NYC Institute. Mano y corazón. Muchísimas gracias, como siempre, to our Facebook Live audience who is participating. Thank you for all of your comments. Shout outs to all of you. And we look forward to seeing you for the next Plática. And with that, it comes to closure for today, but we look forward to seeing you again. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.